let's talk a little bit about the SEAL community and the French Foreign Legion as an institution. What's the difference? What were the differences in the selections? What's the difference in the culture? What is the difference in the mission set? What's the deal? People have been asking me. And it's a good question. I take it for granted because I've done both. I just kind of assume people know what the difference is, but apparently people don't, and they're curious. And so I thought it was a good topic for a video. Thanks again for one of the viewers for suggesting it. Once again, love that collaboration. It's fantastic because it gets my head spinning and it takes me outside of myself for a second and realize what information, what gaps there are. First of all, we need to understand what the Legion is and what it's not. The French Foreign Legion is not a special force unit. Navy SEAL are. The SEAL community is. It's a naval special warfare, SEALs. The French Foreign Legion is a highly trained infantry unit. It's a different deal, and you're also got to look at it as a whole, right? There's only 2,500 something SEALs, and there's about 8,000 French Foreign Legionnaires. And the French Foreign Legion is a package. It's a package deal for France. It's a one-stop shop. In the French Foreign Legion, they have its own cavalry. They have their own tanks. They have their own parachute regiment. They have their own engineering regiments. They have their own cooks. They have their own administration. They have their own medical staff, right? It's all in-house. So that's what's great about the Legion. They do everything internal, everything. They don't outsource anything. You might have a handful of civilian contractors doing work with the insurance or something, but that's it. The French Foreign Legion is a one-stop shop for France, and they have their own infantry units also. The SEALs are SEALs. It's a special operations group. It's direct action mission set, some foreign internal defense, training of indigenous forces. That's not the mission set overall for the French Foreign Legion. There is some fit included. There is training of indigenous forces down in Africa and wherever else, because France is very spread out in Africa. 26 countries in Africa speak French. That's not a coincidence. So the French are down there a lot, training all the different countries and keeping those ties strong, those bonds strong. Now let's shift to selection a little bit. People have a little bit of misunderstanding of the differences. People ask, what's harder, French Foreign Legion selection or SEAL selection? SEAL selection, by far. It's not even a question what was harder as far as a selection standpoint. First of all, getting to the SEAL selection, buds, is extremely hard. Just getting there is brutally hard. I mean, I had to train and test for 9 months as a civilian to even get rostered up to go to the special warfare boot camp for the special programs, and then go to Buds Prep and train, and then go to Buds and all of that. The whole pipeline for the SEAL selection was 18 months. And I did it the fastest a human being could do it. It wasn't that I was special. It's that I never got hurt and I failed anything to get rolled. So I did 8 weeks of boot camp. I did 8 weeks and I hit a good clip. So I didn't have any gaps where I had to wait for another class or anything like that. I got lucky in that sense. 8 weeks of Buds Prep, very fast. Then I went right into Buds, went all the way through the 6 months of Buds, no problem. And then the 7 months of SQT, no problem. Class 284. Buds Class 284, if people keep asking. So that was 18 months of no shit nearly every day, having tests, having the runs. I mean, Buds is legendary for how hard it is. Buds was out of body experience hard. People can't quite understand what hard is. People that have been to Buds know carrying those boats, being hypothermic like that, you can't even put it into words what a boat on a head running all night, hundreds of miles over a week, and what that actually feels like. To be able to fall asleep running is the next level. Now, let's shift to French Foreign Legion selection. French Foreign Legion selection is an infantry army boot camp, right? So it's simple, it's shorter. It was 4 months for me and 5 months with the selection. Now, let's get into kind of the nuances here. You have that initial interview process for the French Foreign Legion where you're going to the Gestapo interviews, you're doing the psychological evaluations, you're doing all that shit. That you have to navigate very strategically. You have to answer correctly. You have to have no real holes in your game. You have to be leaning into the truth strategically. And they have to like the answers you're given or you're getting chopped. You know, they only take 1 out of 15 or something will actually get through that hole who come to the door and knock. So that will actually get selected. But once you're selected, you're going into a basic infantry boot camp, right? Now, this was the nuance I was getting at. Harder physically, SEAL selection, but by far. Also on the technical side, much harder. Because you're doing skydiving and all that stuff in SQT. In French Foreign Legion, you have the emotional, psychological problem. You have the language also. So there's a new flavors added in of difficulty that you're not dealing in Buds. You still have the comforts of being in your home country. You're around your bros. You're all doing the same thing. You're all living your dream. The French Foreign Legion, it's not quite that, right? Especially if you're coming from the Western world. You're walking into a harsh environment. Some certain nationalities are kind of cold to you at first. And there's that challenge with the language. You feel very isolated and it's very raw, right? The budget's a lot less. That's another thing. So you're going bare bones. You're eating way less, not even close. You're dealing with extreme cold and not being dressed for the situation, right? Your gear's very simple. You're dealing with also the feeling that you lost something. My situation was, so the psychological problem was very strong because it was going back to basics. Literally, back to basic. It was going back to fucking basics. After having been a Navy SEAL, jumping out of planes, doing halos, back to shoot, move, and communicate with some guys who had never even been in the military, right? So that was my problem I was solving, and I can only speak for me. That was the most difficult part, is taking that fucking, not even bite of humble pie, shoving the whole humble pie in my fucking mouth and down my throat, and using the French Foreign Legion as a vehicle of self-development. That's what I was coming to the French Foreign Legion for. And to stack my deck, stack the resume a little bit, because I hadn't heard of a Navy SEAL being a French Foreign Legionnaire before. I knew it was going to be hard, and I knew the hardest part would be starting back at the bottom, like we said in that other video, what that was like. That was extremely difficult, something that I never dealt with in the SEAL selection pipeline. Right? I was living my dream. I was stoked. Very hard, but stoked. French Foreign Legion, I was resetting after having had all that experience And that was difficult. The runs, let's talk specifically about the runs. The runs were extremely hard, right? The French Foreign Legion runs, they're running in the cold, they're running in the snow, they're running all the time, fast, and I wasn't. So I'm just getting hazed in the back, getting yelled at. So that was difficult also, is the psychological side. I just had to block a lot out. Some guys would just fly through. They're, 100 pounds soaking wet. They're, 50 kilos. The rest of them, 50 kilos soaking wet, man. And they're doing all right. But everybody's still dealing with the psychological problem in the French Foreign Legion. It's harsh. It's a little rustic, if you speak French. So nobody's immune to that shit. That new language. Even the French, the guys who speak French, there's only a handful who are actually going into the French Foreign Legion. Those guys suffer because they're having to explain all this shit to a bunch of knuckle draggers like me who don't speak French. Right? So they have a lot of shit piled on their plate and shit they gotta eat when shit doesn't go smooth for the class. That's a whole nother element, is the clusterfuck that is created, as one can imagine, when you're giving out orders in the military orders in a fucking language that 5% of the guys speak, maybe 10% of the entire class. That's a different deal. So, to be clear now, getting into the ambiance, the environment of actually when you're at a SEAL team and actually while you're at a regiment in the French Foreign Legion. Now that's something different. In the SEAL teams, fucking beautiful. Amazing lifestyle. Especially on the West Coast, guys, you're going to work, very casual. Unless you're going up in the office, you're in street clothes or sport clothes for the most part. You can work out on the beach before you work, and then you have some platoon activities or whatever you're doing. If you're training hard. So if you're not, that's a different deal. We'll talk about training in another video of the French Foreign Legion and the SEALs. We'll talk about the training specifically. We're talking about culture here and selection. The SEAL teams, fucking beautiful. Great ambiance. I loved it. It was fantastic. French Foreign Legion, fucking hard. It's like prison where they hand you a gun every once in a while. That's what it's like, because you're so restricted on movement. They're so strict. You're walking in lines everywhere. You're checking in. You're checking out. It's a cold environment. It's a harsh environment. If you're not ready for that, you're going to get fucking smoked there. You're going to get fucking run over. It's a very harsh environment. It's not for the faint of heart. You got to remember, there's a lot of guys coming from very rough countries who grew up rough, grew up poor, grew up knowing some serious fucking hardship. Not like in the United States where somebody's fucking iPhone doesn't connect to the Wi-Fi and it's a fucking big deal. These motherfuckers are hard, are very, very tough, and they bring that tough ambiance. And then the guys that stay there who don't even want to go back to their country because it's so bad become leadership, and they're even harder, right? So, and they push all that culture and that ambiance down, that tough Eastern Bloc fucking culture that has its positives and it has its negatives, right? It's a man shit. The Legion is anti-woke, man. It is the last bastion of anti-wokeness in the fucking world, probably, man. No women allowed. Still no women allowed. They don't even fuck with that. That's not even on their radar. And you hear some wild shit. They like racist jokes, homophobic. You hear it all in the French Foreign Legion, and there's no online classes or sexual harassment briefs like you have in the United States military. Even as a SEAL, we go to these sexual harassment. It's fucking ridiculous. We weren't even working with women. And how much wasted government money is on that shit. It's fucking ridiculous. mission readiness and we're all in there on a sexual harassment brief, right? Now they're doing pronouns and all that shit. What the fuck, man? Who is making these rules? We live in a clown world. The French Foreign Legion, that shit is non-existent. So there's a breath of fresh air there. And that's not even talked about. A lot of these motherfuckers, if you said proper pronouns, they don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. Dead serious. It is refreshing, to say the least. So there's positives and negatives, right? It's some man shit. It's a little bit different. You're only living with men. It's only men in the French Foreign Legion. It's on the regiments, or that's all it is. So when you're at the regiment, you're housed in. People aren't going in and out, and their gate is 24/7 security, multiple guys on it. It's on lockdown, man. It's the French Foreign Legion. And I understand why the ambiance is like that, and because the history. You had guys, checkered backgrounds coming from all over the world. You got to consolidate them under a foreign language into a fighting unit, into an organized fighting unit. And so they strict fucking discipline. You don't walk across the grass wrong in the French Foreign Legion, they'll throw your ass in fucking jail for 5 days. These guys don't fuck around, man. So the ambiance and the lifestyle in the French Foreign Legion, much harder, right? It's regimented. You're getting up in the morning at fucking whatever, and you're running. It doesn't matter how cold it is. Freezing fucking rain, freezing, ice falling down, you're running. So it's just a hard environment. That being said, and we'll talk about it more specifically, SEALs fucking train way harder, right? When the training cells, you're training, you're pushing the envelope extremely fucking hard, but the lifestyle's better. Lifestyle's a little bit more chill and it's normal. French Foreign Legion is not like that. So 6 in one, half dozen in the other. It's totally apples and oranges. It's two totally different worlds and two different mission sets and just two totally different cultures overall. Doing either one, you're going to be a better person if you go into it with the right fucking mentality and you pass and you don't fucking quit. That's what it's all about. To navigate either one, you've got to know yourself. You've got to institute your own discipline in the SEALs and in the French Foreign Legion, and to accurately and strategically come out better on the other side. Man, y'all know what it is. It's all about being smart, man. Out here.